This episode of Give 'em the Bird podcast is brought to you by my online group coaching program, GTB Academy. If you're ready to break away from weight-centric wellness, reconnect with your body, make peace with food, and find movement you enjoy, learn more at gtbcoaching.com/GTB Academy. That's gtbcoaching.com/GTB Academy. What's up, friends? It's Haley, aka Bird, and you are tuning in to the Give 'em the Bird podcast. This podcast is all about challenging what it means to be healthy and fit. It's about celebrating sustainable behavior change and non-scale victories. And most importantly, it's about giving the bird to the diet industry and societal expectations of body size. Why? Well, because at the end of the day, you have an entire life to live that does not require your body look a certain way. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's give 'em the bird. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Give 'em the Bird podcast. My name is Haley, aka Bird. I'm a certified intuitive eating counselor and weight neutral health coach. And today I'm going to be talking about how you can get started with fitness or how to increase your physical activity. This is probably the top area or concern that I work with folks on. For those of you who don't know, I actually work full-time at a university student wellness center, and I meet with students for a variety of things, including things like intuitive eating and mindfulness and wellness coaching. But I also function as our department's fitness specialist. So I get to see a wide variety of students, those who come in with specific questions about exercise, those who are familiar with exercise, but they just want to come up with a structured plan, those who are referred to me by a healthcare provider, maybe due to overexercising as part of an eating disorder or disordered eating. And then I also get to meet with a lot of students who are just wanting to get active, but they don't really know where to start. I see a lot of students who were maybe athletes in high school, and they always had like a structured plan for what they were supposed to do. They regularly worked out for their sport, but they walked into the weight room and just had a workout on a whiteboard or something. They didn't actually necessarily learn what to do, why they're doing it, etc. And so when they get to college and they no longer have that structure, they're like, how the shit do I do this? I also see a lot of students who have never really been active before, and they want to get started. So either way, if someone is wanting to get active from a baseline of 0, as in they really haven't been regularly active for like the last 6 months or so, I take a fairly similar approach. Keep in mind, though, that we are all individual. So I do take into account things like history with physical activity. What have you done in the past with physical activity? Do you have any history of injury, history of eating disorders or disordered eating? We also, when thinking about planning, we look at things like time, right? So for example, a first-year student who is maybe living in a residence hall, they're not like super involved, they really just go to classes and hang out with their friends, compared to a professional student with a family. Those two people are going to have completely different availability, completely different interests, etc. So just keep in mind that your individual experience is really going to inform what this looks like for you. And the best way to come up with a plan specific for you is to work with a coach. I do talk about working with a coach a couple times in this episode. And at the end, I provide a couple affordable, accessible ways that you can work specifically with me that don't require you to drop thousands of dollars. Because let's be real, not everybody has that type of money, including myself. Keep in mind, though, that you can get pretty far on your own with what I'll be sharing with you today. So this is going to be a really great step. And hopefully by the end, you are familiar with what you can do to get more active. And you also have some ideas of where you can turn to if you feel like you need a little bit more support. So let's dive in. What I commonly see with folks is when they're wanting to get active is this drive to like completely overhaul their life overnight. So think about like New Year's resolutions, for example. When it comes to exercise, we go from not doing anything, no structured physical activity, to like the next day or maybe the next week, we expect ourselves to dive in headfirst, work out in a structured way, maybe 3 to 4 to 5 times per week, Holy shit, that is a massive behavior change to make. And I think it explains why usually it doesn't work out, right? If we look at the statistics just related to getting active and getting starting an exercise routine at the beginning of the year as part of a New Year's resolution, they're not very favorable. They don't look very good. Now, in these situations, I think it's common, we might try to enlist some support or accountability from like a friend or a partner or someone. But beyond that, we don't really do anything to like set ourselves up for success. We don't usually plan ahead, for potential barriers or things that might pop up that might get us off track, quote unquote. We just aren't really very realistic about what we can and cannot do, right? I think that in these situations and when people start getting active, they really just rely on our motivation and a heavy reliance on self-discipline and, having no excuses. So it often sounds like this time around, I'm just going to be really self-disciplined. Like I'm just going to make it happen. No more excuses. I'm not giving myself any other option. I'm just going to, pull myself up by my bootstraps and freaking do it. But we're humans, and humans, we have an astronomical amount of variables that make doing any sort of thing, any sort of habit, any sort of task difficult. But it's just so common when it comes to fitness, it's like we forget about that. We just expect ourselves to like nose to the grindstone, get it done, even though I haven't been working out consistently. I'm just going to do this shit. And again, we rely on that motivation, which isn't usually very healthy, especially when we're thinking about a New Year's resolution, right? To like get us through. And then we wonder why we get burned out and why we can't stick with it. So whether you are looking to get back into fitness or you are brand new to exercise and you're wanting to get into it, I think that you will benefit from this episode. So stay tuned. So first and foremost, I want you to think about getting active or starting exercise as a habit. It is a habit just like any other. You got to make a habit of moving more, just like you had to make a habit of brushing your teeth at night or, journaling before bed or walking your dog over your lunch break. And I think this is where a lot of people kind of start off on the wrong foot or don't set themselves up for success right from the get-go like they could. Instead of focusing on building a habit out of moving more regularly, I think we often place an emphasis and focus more on how can I get a good workout in? How can I be the most efficient at achieving whatever goal I have in regards to movement, right? How can I see results the fastest? But if we can make movement more habitual and just get in the habit of moving more as part of our life, it's a heck ton easier to then modify the details and make them more specific later on, right? Not only this, but research has shown that a 1 hour workout doesn't negate the damage that can be done from consistently sitting 8+ hours a day. So keep that in mind, that unplanned, unstructured movement really is important, right? This whole idea of like moving more and sitting less is really important. Now, I like to think of it as when we're making movement more habitual, we're really moving it closer to the forefront of our mind. We're starting to reprioritize it a little bit. And I believe that despite what we hear in our society, that it's not that people aren't moving because they're lazy necessarily. Of course, there's going to be some people who might fall into that category, but I think a lot of people aren't moving because they have so much other shit going on in their lives, right? Like when we think about getting more active, we think it's going to take hours, right? We have to set aside these huge chunks of time. And to ask ourselves to do that when we have so much other shit going on, that's really difficult. So it's very common that I see people drop movement in order to prioritize other things, and that totally makes sense. So again, asking ourselves to all of a sudden carve out 3, 4, 5 hours out of our week for structured exercise, it's not going to work out. There's just so many people that don't have the availability to prioritize it in that way. And I'm telling you right now that does not have to be what prioritizing movement looks like. Moving movement to the forefront of our mind doesn't have to mean setting aside hours out of our week in order to exercise. So one of the easiest ways to increase activity is to make something that you're already doing more active. A really common one that I hear about a lot is, can you park in the back of the parking lot at the grocery store or take the stairs instead of the elevator if that's accessible for you and your body? It can also be things like standing up and walking around when you're talking on the phone or when you're folding laundry. Essentially, we're standing and walking in place of sitting. So sitting less and moving more. One little caveat here is to make sure that this doesn't become an obsessive or an unhealthy behavior. We don't need to be doing calf raises in the shower or squatting when we're brushing our teeth all the time, right? And I think going into it and being really clear on our intention for this movement can help prevent it from becoming unhealthy. And that's something that any good coach is going to help you uncover before even diving into movement, right? And now you might be wondering, like, what is the harm in doing calf raises in the shower or squats when I'm brushing my teeth? I will tell you that in my experience working with folks with eating disorders or disordered eating tendencies, and even as someone who has just seen, clients with the best intentions, they can go south really quickly with this recommendation, and all of a sudden moving all the time and not sitting, like not being sedentary, it can become really obsessive and unhealthy. So I talk about motivation in my initial consultation with folks literally every single time I meet with someone. And then we regularly screen and refer back to it. So I really don't want your main driving force to be about weight loss here or to be about calorie burning. So are you parking in the back of the parking lot to get more steps in an attempt to use every opportunity you can to burn calories? Or are you doing it as a small way to make movement a part of your everyday life in an attempt to reap the benefits of an active lifestyle? Same action, but being driven by completely different motivators. And that motivation tells us a lot about whether you're going to stick with something, if you're going to enjoy it, and really important to me, whether you're going to develop a healthy or unhealthy relationship with exercise in the process. Now, the idea of uncovering motivation isn't necessarily as simple as, tell me what motivates you, right? It can be, but it can also take a lot of time and some deeper work, which is why in my online group coaching program, GTB Academy, we're going to be spending several weeks before we even add in movement. And during these several weeks, we're going to be uncovering our motivation, building self-compassion, understanding the dangers and harm of weight-centric wellness, and then we're going to add in the movement. So we take more time in the beginning so that we can avoid harm later on. And that's true with any habit that I coach people on, whether it's related to sleep or stress or relationships. We want to take the time to fully understand how we relate to these things before just diving in head on, because then we're probably going to have to deal with them later on. So number one, get clear on your motivation. And then number two, make movement more habitual. Move it to the forefront of your mind by finding ways to make things you're already doing more active. Once just plain old movement is feeling more regular, we can then work our way into more structured movement. And when I say structured movement, I'm not necessarily meaning that you have to jump right into, a 3-day per week bodyweight workouts at home or finding a local gym to start going to classes. I just mean that we're allocating specific time for physical activity separate from the movement that we're already doing as part of our daily life. So say you were already actively parking near the back of the parking lot a lot when you were able, continue doing that and add in, for example, 10 minutes of walking over your lunch break or 10 minutes of dancing in your living room 3 times per week. So essentially, we're taking the movement up a notch. We're getting a little bit more intentional about it, adding a little bit more structure. Now, the key here is choosing movement you enjoy. It can be walking, dancing, stretching, mini band strength, bodyweight strength, hula hooping, rollerblading. There's really no guidelines here other than getting moving outside that usual movement that you've already added into your day. So yes, 10-minute counts. Yes, walking counts. Yes, stretching counts. If you're not sweating, still counts, right? And what you might be able to tell is that this quote unquote stage of getting active is really a great opportunity to start challenging those movement rules you might have had in the past, or if you're getting moving for the first time, this is a great time to be aware of those thoughts popping into your head. And it's really good to try to nip those in the butt right away rather than waiting until later on. So in our work together, we spend a lot of time kind of diving into those conditioned beliefs and rules around exercise before we get into even more structured movement. Now, this is when things start to get really individual. Not only do we all enjoy different types of movement, but this is when that time variable really comes into play, right? So the freshman versus the professional student with a family. Time allocation and availability is going to be very different. So regardless though, I want you to start with something that is super small and doable for you. I don't care if your best friend Jill lives the exact same life as you and it's something different. I want you to start with what works for you. That could be a 10-minute walk 3 times per week over your lunch break, maybe 5 minutes of stretching before bed every night, right? We're making it a little bit more specific by assigning a duration and a frequency to it, but it has to be doable and enjoyable for you. Now, a good way to know if something is doable is by using what we call a confidence interval. And how we do this is we ask on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being not confident at all and 10 being couldn't be more confident, I can absolutely do this. Where do you feel you fall in regards to XYZ, in regards to this habit of going for a 10-minute walk over your lunch break 3 times per week? Anything at a 7 or higher, high five, let's go for it. You're feeling confident enough to undertake this new goal. Anything under a 7, it just tells us that maybe I need to niche down a little bit, make this goal even smaller. So for example, could I decrease it down to just a 5-minute walk over my lunch break instead of 10? Or if that still does not feel quite at a 7 yet, can I just commit to 1 lap around the building over my lunch? Essentially what we're doing is finding what amount of movement makes me feel at least a 7 out of 10 confidence about it, right? So find something that's enjoyable, something that you feel somewhat confident about, and start there. Once we get that structure started, we really just build on it. That 5-minute walk over lunch 3 times per week might eventually turn into 5 times per week, or it might turn into a 10-minute walk 3 to 5 times per week. That might build into a 20-minute jog over lunch, which might build into a 30-minute workout over lunch, right? So we're just going to strategically build on it. And again, another plug for working with a coach, because yes, you can easily decide, hey, I'm going to go from 5 to 10 minutes, but a good coach is going to be able to ask you the right questions, troubleshoot setbacks, brainstorm ideas, and pick up on the things that you might not be able to. For example, I am really good at picking up when a client might be shifting to more of this like all or nothing, no excuses mentality. It often shows up as very subtle jabs at themselves and they don't even notice it. But if that negative self-talk does go unnoticed, it can again really easily damage our relationship with movement. It can lead to us doing too much too fast, getting burned out, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves back at square one, i.e. not having moved for over 6 months. So if, as your coach, I can say, hey, I noticed when you were talking about not being able to walk over your lunch break last week, you mentioned feeling really guilty about it. And I wonder if we could explore that a little bit. So together we can, again, nip it in the butt before it goes downhill and spirals into that unhealthy relationship where now all of a sudden guilt or not wanting to feel guilty, avoiding the feeling of guilt is motivating us to go on our walk instead of all these other better benefits that we can get from moving over our lunch break. So let's reflect just a little bit. The first thing we want to do is get clear on our motivation. And then number 2, we want to make movement more habitual, move it to the forefront of our mind by finding ways to make things that we're already doing more active. Then once we've built upon that, we're going to do the next step, which we just covered, adding in some structure, and then from there, continuing to build on it. Hopefully you can see now how parking in the back of a parking lot can over time really strategically lead to a 30-minute workout 3 times per week, for example. Now, I've mentioned working one-on-one with a coach several times, and as awesome as that is, I also know that it's not necessarily accessible or affordable for everyone. And so I wanted to provide you with a couple of ways that you can work specifically with me, whether that be in regards to this habit of getting more active or any other habit related to your health and well-being, from a lens of wanting to do it in a way that improves and maintains a healthy relationship with movement, food, and your body. So the first of those is our monthly GTB Coffee Chats. These happen every first Saturday of the month in the morning, anywhere from like 8 to 10 a.m. They're live via Zoom, and those that we've had so far have been really small groups, so no more than 5 or 6 people. It's super laid back. Sometimes I will have us, I'll come in with a specific topic, but other times it's just kind of us chatting. And it's really a great opportunity to ask questions, utilize myself and the other attendees to troubleshoot issues or bounce ideas back and forth. And again, whether that's related to the topic of getting started and having a healthy relationship with movement or something else. So if you're interested in those, you can head on over to gtbcoaching.com, and about halfway down on the homepage, you can input your name and your email, and I will let you know when those dates and times are available. Again, we're working on setting it up so it's every first Saturday of the month. You can also just follow me on Instagram at Give 'em the Bird Podcast or Haley_GTB Coaching. And when those are coming up, we will post on my story and have options for like what time frame works for you. The second super exciting offering that I have where you can work with myself is GTB Academy. GTB Academy is my new online group coaching program that's beginning August 1st. It is a 14-week long program, and the goal of it really is to help you reconnect with your body, disconnect from weight-centric wellness, make peace with food, and to find movement you enjoy. So there's going to be an online component where you're going to have access to 7+ modules of in-depth content. And then there's also going to be a virtual but live coaching opportunity. So we'll have 7 bi-weekly workshops to learn and digest the content from the different phases, which I'm going to run through here in a second. And then we're also going to have 7 bi-weekly group check-ins, which will be me leading them with all of your fellow course participants. So essentially it's going to go week 1, learn the topic. Week 2, check-in. Week 3, learn a topic. Week 4, check-in. So we alternate the workshops with the group check-ins. I want to tell you about the phases. So there's 7 different phases that are 2 weeks long each. I wanted them to be 2 weeks long because I just don't feel like a week is long enough. So often when I've been in group programs, it's like 1 week per topic, and all of a sudden it gets to Thursday and I'm like, holy shit, I forgot to do this. So we're going to be doing 2 week long phases. Phase 1 is going to be all about regulating our nervous system and creating self-compassion. Phase number 2 is letting go of weight-centric wellness. Phase 3 is reconnecting with your body. Phase 4 is making peace with food. Phase 5 is body diversity and respect. Phase 6 aligns very well with this episode, which is moving for more. And then phase 7 is carrying on. So what do we do after this 14-week program is done? In addition to the online content, the weekly group check-ins and workshops, there's also going to be a downloadable PDF workbook for each of those phases that I just mentioned. That's going to include journal prompts, handouts, worksheets, activities, quizzes, all the things. I think one of the coolest parts of it, which I wouldn't have needed to offer this with a program, but I just think it's really, really cool, is access to a private online community. So once you sign up, you're going to be entered into this online private community, a Facebook group that's exclusively for course participants. And on it, you're going to be able to connect with each other. You're going to be able to get additional support from me between those week-long check-ins. And this is ongoing, so you're going to have lifetime access. So well after the 14 weeks is up, you're still going to be able to get support from me and the other participants within this Facebook group. So you're probably wondering, okay, Bird, this is great. What's the cost? Well, the GTB Coffee Chats are free, if I didn't mention that. This online program does have a number value to it. However, I want you to know that it's valued at well over $2,000. Like, you're getting 14 workshops and check-ins with me. You are getting exclusive content that I only use with my one-on-one clients, and then also some other content that is available to more people out there. But it's valued at over $2,000. With that being said, I feel really, really strongly about making wellness and movement more accessible for more people. So the early bird pricing is $579. That's like a quarter of the price of what it's valued at. That pricing, though, is going to end July 1. So on July 1st, that price point is going to be increasing. So if you are interested at all, if anything I've said has rubbed you the right way or aligned with how you're feeling, please go check out gtbcoaching.com/GTB Academy and get your name on the wait list. Putting your name on the wait list, it does not lock you into the program, so you don't have to participate in it, but it does lock you into the pricing in the event you do want to participate when registration opens on July 1st. So again, 14-week online group coaching program, 7 workshops, 7 group check-ins, lifetime access to an online support group with participants from the program, and that will continue to grow as we do more rounds and cohorts of this. $579. That's all. for the early bird pricing. So if you get your name on the wait list before July 1st when registration opens, you will lock in that $579. On July 1st, though, that number is going to increase a bit. So get your name on the wait list, gtbcoaching.com/GTB Academy. If you have questions, feel free to email me. You can email me at giveemthebirdpodcast@gmail.com. You can also DM me on Instagram on the podcast page, Give 'em the Bird Podcast, or on my coaching page, Haley_GTB Coaching. I'm going to include all these links below. That way, if you have questions about it or are hesitant in some way, feel like something's not clarified, wondering who this might be for, if it's for you or not, feel free to reach out to me, and also give me a follow on Instagram, both the podcast page and my coaching page, because I'm going to be releasing more information about it in the upcoming days and weeks. I really hope that you found this episode helpful. I hope that regardless of where you're at in your movement journey, there was something that you took from it, maybe to implement in your own life or maybe to support those around you. I would love to hear your thoughts. So as always, feel free to head on over to Instagram and give me a shout out or shoot me a DM and share what you thought about this one. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of GTB. If you're enjoying this podcast, feel free to head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate, review, and subscribe. You can also share this podcast on Instagram and tag me at Give 'em the Bird Podcast. I will see you back here next week for another episode, but in the meantime, go give 'em the bird.